So let's look at what spiritual crisis means to a global crisis. We're all in agreement that actually the world is unsustainable in the way that we're living now. Climate change is happening. India's getting 50-degree temperature. I mean, it's you speak to anyone who's been to India, that wasn't the case 20 years ago, right? That's clearly happening. Here's the other thing. 18,000 children a day die in poverty conditions through malnutrition. Do you think the global crisis is going to hit these places first? No. It's lush, we're getting enough water for now. It's going to hit the hardest hit places that are already having a problem. I can't sit with that very comfortably, if I'm honest. So it brings up that activist position in us. Well, in me. Sorry, I'm making an assumption we've all of a sudden had a transpersonal moment. But that was mine. Sorry for projecting it onto you. But what we do is, the world is our life support system. It is spiritual, it's sacred. If you read Heinrich Skolimowski's philosophical discourse on the planet as sanctuary, honestly, you couldn't see the world the same again. It's beautiful. The indigenous wisdom, we're not just discovering this, come on, we've got lineages, 10,000 years worth of lineages that are looking at shamanic rites and sacredness and really having respect for the world that we live in. So, spiritual crisis in its basic form then can be seen as a positive attempt by the psyche to restore a sense of wholeness. Any good Jungian would say, yeah, we'll hit with that. But hang on, let's take it further. Spiritual crisis might be an enantiodromia. That's a word that Jung used for a flip of consciousness, where we're now moving into a whole new way of doing, being, knowing, becoming, and belonging. Right? So, let's just say that yes, wholeness, great, but not just my individual wholeness, the collective. And those are questions that we don't know how to ask yet because we haven't asked them. And if you've read Barbara Marx Hubbard's work, she talks about, we've never been here before with a problem on such a scale. What will we do because we don't know how to do it? So it's up to us to really step up to the mark and learn to do it. And you'll notice I'm using a verb, not a noun. To do it is what we need to do. So one of the things that, the reason why spiritual crises are probably popping up in our culture is we've got a very well-honed consensus reality that's reinforced by adverts. So, you know, like now you'll go away and know that Daz won't save your life and Jacob's cream crackers, as nice as they are, will not enlighten you. Enjoy them nonetheless. But what we have is a mechanistic existence. We've carved up the world, we're taking what we want from it, and, you know, in a way, that's been part of the problem. That's a reduction that we can no longer live with, and we need to shift something into a more holistic perspective. But we need a new myth, and there's many people saying that at this time in the transpersonal movement. So, you know, what is that new myth going to be? How do we enact it? And again, a verb, how are we going to get to grips with it and do something different? So, you know, these hierarchies that we've assumed in nature are really not fit for purpose in the way that we need to live. If we're talking about service and stewardship, and these words have been around for a long time. I remember friends of mine being earth stewards in the 70s. You know, this is not new. This has been around a long time, but we've ignored it, and to our peril. So it's about being with nature, and being part of nature, and using our finite sources wisely. That's the question. So the function of our ego then is to serve our journey into wholeness. And if we have an eclipse of the ego, well, that's only the dawning of a new... Now, anyone read Christopher Bache, his work? You'll understand where I'm coming from. Beautiful. All about that particular journey. And Michael Washburn as well. Very good transpersonal philosopher who's retired now, but talks about the ego eclipse, the ego and the dynamic ground. Very beautiful, well thought out work. So our ego is to serve our journey into wholeness. And that's a step that we need to make. People going through spiritual emergencies are making that step for us. They should be celebrated, and the stories should be not, oh, you know, how close is this to this, whatever. These are people that are moving forward, evolutionaries. We're at an evolutionary edge. And maybe that's what the emphasis we need to put on this. People are already dropping out of these strong ego structures and starting to try and move into something like that. That's a natural progression.